What's up everybody, it's RobinGaming here. Now before I get into today's video, two quick little things that I want to share with you. First of all, this review for The Last of Us Left Behind will be spoiler free. Don't worry about it if you haven't played the DLC yet. You're still planning to, because I won't be revealing anything from the story in this review. At the same time, I won't be showing you any sort of content, parts of the DLC here in the video that might spoil something to you. It's just going to be general parts of the DLC and fights, so don't worry about that. And second of all, really quickly, I already talked about this in my previous video. I will be doing daily videos from this Sunday on till the next week on Sunday. You can expect a video from me every day, so that's really exciting stuff. And then for now, let's just get into the review for The Last of Us Left Behind. Now, quickly looking back at The Last of Us, of course the game came out in June of 2013, and I'd been looking forward to it ever since it was announced. It was a Naughty Dog game, a big fan of Uncharted I am, and I just knew that The Last of Us was going to be something special, and it turned out to be that. It was seen by many as the game of the year from last year, and all in all, it just got a lot of praise from both critics and the people who played it. But then the question I was asking all the time to myself was, does this game need single player DLC? Naughty Dog had never done that before with the Uncharted franchise, and I was just wondering if that would, in some way maybe ruin the game or just not live up to the sort of like quality standards that the main game had. So all in all, I was a bit skeptical about it, but now that I have played it for about 3 hours it took me to get through it, and I did it all in one go, I'm happy to say that yes, The Last of Us Left Behind is an awesome piece of DLC for the game that truly adds something to my overall experience that I had from the main game. So let's quickly start off with the story, and I'm gonna keep this one short because of course I don't want to spoil too much, like I said before. Now the story is about Ellie, who you know from the main game, and her friend Riley. Now they both go and explore this mall that they find, and there's a lot of stuff that will happen in there. Once again, I'm just not going to spoil anything, but it's safe to say that a lot of cool stuff happens in there, that the story is quite, it's good, it's a good story. There's not really it didn't exactly, blow me away like the first one did in terms of the plot or something, but there's a few things that just happen in the DLC, a few interesting plot points that made me look at the main game in an entirely different way, especially in terms of Ellie. And once again, I won't spoil here, but there's a particular scene that happens, and people who play the DLC will know what I'm talking about here. But once that happened, it made me think of it, and I just thought, well, this was actually pretty obvious if you had thought about it, but I mean, it was quite surprising and interesting at the same time. I thought it was a cool plot point there, but yeah, I know this all sounds a bit vague if you haven't played the DLC, and I won't reveal what it actually is. Now, the presentation you can expect from The Last of Us Left Behind, what you saw in the actual real The Last of Us. The game still looks amazing. Me having played on the PS4 now for a couple of months, I came back to this game, to The Last of Us Left Behind, and I played it, and I just almost couldn't notice a difference in terms of graphics because the game still looks amazing. If you play it right now, you won't be having any feeling like, oh, this looks old or this looks any bad or something, because it's still, there's a lot of detail in there. There is the mall that Ellie and Riley explore, and there's a lot of different environments to that whole thing. Really awesomely made, I gotta say. And of course the soundtrack is still great. I think they even added a few pieces of music in the DLC, which I gotta say, I was a big fan of the soundtrack from the previous, or from the main game I mean, and once again it just really contributed to the whole vibe. Now the gameplay is what I think is the most interesting part of this DLC to talk about.
Yes! Rick fucking Master!
First of all, there's a lot of exploration. You will get to a lot of these different locations in that mall with different things to do, and that is actually the biggest part of the DLC, I would say. Now there are of course some combat section, and this is where my main gripe, my main complaint with the DLC lies, is that and this is not a spoiler, so please, hopefully, you don't mind me saying this, because this happens in the first 10 minutes of the game, but it becomes clear that you don't just play the story of Ellie and Riley, but at the same time there's a kind of like similar storyline where Ellie is on her own, and I won't spoil where in the main campaign that takes place or something, but she's on her own, and yeah, she has to pretty much get through a different sort of mall with a lot of enemies in there. And you know, when I played that and when I found out, when I actually beat the game, I found out that that whole part was just there for combat sections, because I think in the main game they revealed that Ellie had never fired a gun before, or at least not shot someone before, and of course, so they couldn't do that, you know, in the DLC, because that takes place before the main game does. And then when I beat the DLC and I looked back at that whole part, I just thought, well, it was kind of pointless that that part was in there. It was obviously done so there could be some sort of combat pieces in the DLC. And don't get me wrong, I mean, combat is something I expected to be in the DLC, and it's a big part of the actual game. It's a big part of The Last of Us itself. But I just thought that the whole different storyline there didn't have any real essence, no point in doing so. But still, there were some cool fights. You had, for example, infected versus human fights, where this time you didn't just fight either the infected or the humans alone. No, you actually fought them all together. So, for example, you could distract some infected by throwing a bottle and actually make them attack the other humans, so that there's a lot less enemies left for you. There were a few rooms that you could just get past without killing anyone, which I thought was really awesome. Was also in the main campaign, so I really liked doing that. But I did have, you know, some sort of complaint with the final part of the DLC, the final fight actually, was that you know, for example, you had this fight with, like, I don't know, seven humans or something. You barely had any bullets. I played on survival difficulty, so it was really hard for me to beat that section. And then I got to my destination and it was like, oh shit, there's more enemies coming. You know, it just seemed like a bit of filler to me, just some parts to make the DLC last longer, because of course it's still $15 and they want to give you, you know, a good amount of gameplay time in there. But one little other complaint that I had towards the end was in the final fight, that I, for example, beat a few enemies, I killed them, then I got past a certain checkpoint, I died there, and I just respawned, of course, at the checkpoint, but then I went back a bit, so I just walked back in the area, and it triggered the previous checkpoint again when I died. Really weird, you know, it just made me do the same fight again that I had actually already beaten and passed the checkpoint at. So, you know, that's only really the few complaints I had about the DLC, and that, yeah, me playing it on survival difficulty, still, it took me, you know, quite a few tries to beat some of the fights. But that's not a real complaint, of course. But this whole checkpoint thing, where it just made me get back to a previous part of the game, yeah, it got really annoying, because it took me quite a few tries to get past it. Then finally, talking about the value. Now, The Last of Us Left Behind will be about 2 to 3 hours long, depending on, you know, if you're exploring a lot, doing a lot of the side things there, maybe gathering some collectibles and stuff. I guess you can get through it really fast if you play on easy and stuff within like maybe 1 or 1.5 hours. But then again, you can also get, yeah, like I said, 3 hours out of it if you just play on the higher difficulties, and if you take some time to really explore the DLC. Now, what I think is great about it is that it's not like this is any sort of side campaign that just isn't of the same quality, that is a lot less fun to play or doesn't have a good story. No, it is exactly the same. It still has like what, half an hour of cutscenes or something that are of the same great quality as the cutscenes in the main game. It just completely feels like you're playing a different part of the actual game, and you know, of course you have to pay like $15 for it, which isn't really a cheap price tag for it, but at the same time you're getting 3 hours of value for that. The main game is like 10 hours long and you're paying $60 for that. So all in all, I'd say there's a good, you know, there's a good comparison there, and I think those $15 is worth it, especially if you're a fan, you know, of The Last of Us. If you really liked the actual game, then this is just not something you're gonna want to miss out on, because it just sheds some light on a few things that you might have not known from some of the characters in the actual game, and I think that once again it is of the same quality and it's definitely worth it. So that is my conclusion for The Last of Us Left Behind. I really enjoyed it, and it actually really got me back into The Last of Us. I still haven't, you know, completed my survivor playthrough, and I hadn't played The Last of Us for a long time, ever since the PS4 came out pretty much, but having played this DLC now, it just got me back into it, and I really, you know, can't wait to actually go through the main campaign again, because yeah, it made me realize how much I enjoyed the game and how good it was. So all in all, this DLC is definitely a must-have for the real The Last of Us fans. So that was my review for The Last of Us Left Behind. Hopefully you agree with me. If I had to give it an actual grade, then I would probably give it a 9 out of 10. So that's it for now. Hopefully you enjoyed this review and you agree with me on most parts. If you played the DLC, of course, let me know what you thought about it. And then, like I said, I will be doing daily videos the coming week. So hopefully that's something you are as excited about as I am. And then I thank you all for watching and hope to see you again next time.